everyone, welcome to the Comic Game Movie Show. My name is Sean, and today I'm here to review a Netflix original series. Now, this Netflix original series has come out a while ago. It's not fresh. The series actually ended in 2016. It's been on my queue, or as I said, or might as well say the list. It's been on my list for at least 4 years. I saw it before. I thought it looked interesting. I put it on my list for a while. Wow, now, for a very long time, and I just never came back to watch it. And it's been on my list. I've never gotten around to watch it. And you know, like I said, I kept putting it off. And, you know, Corona, you find yourself, you know, sitting there, not nothing to do. And I decided to give it a shot. And it's a show called Longmire, based off the book, the Longmire Mysteries, the Walt Longmire Mystery Book series. And I was a bit conflicted, like, about watching the show. And I gotta say, I'm not gonna make this video too long. It turned out to be one of the best shows I had ever seen. The show was so compelling. I ended up binging all 6 episodes in basically 2.5 weeks. My bad, not all 6 episodes, all 6 seasons. And basically 2.5 weeks. Now the real reason I decided to, the thing that really pushed me over the edge to finally give the show a look, was the fact that now we know that Netflix does not like to give shows more than 4 seasons. Netflix knows that doesn't like to give shows more than 4 seasons. It doesn't. That's not their thing. That's not how they roll. They really don't like to do that. So when I see Longmire has 6 seasons and the show ended in 2016, I mean, that ended before people really knew about Netflix's thing. So if that show could last 6 seasons, I was like, okay, it's on my list. So clearly I saw something about the show that got my attention. It's got 6 seasons. It has to be something good here. And it was fantastic. I loved Longmire. It is everything The Deputy isn't. I reviewed a show called The Deputy, or at least the first episode about it, and I was talking about how it was trying to kind of do this kind of modern day Western thing, this modern day cowboy Western thing, and it miserably failed at it because it felt more like some guy who bought a big truck saying, "I'm a cowboy." That's what it felt like. That's what fucking The Deputy felt like. While Longmire feels like, I don't know, an actual cowboy. Like, it feels there's something so authentic about the show. There's something so rich about the show. The show's like going to an old, it's just like going to a museum. You know what the show's like? The show's like this show's like spending time. It's like growing old and being and having a best friend that you know each other for so long and been through so much together, and now you're old and gray. And that's what it feels like. It feels like an old, gray, wise cowboy, like old, gray, wise grandfather telling you stories. That's what it feels like. The show is so well crafted and so well executed. And honestly, this show is an example of how you do it. I see so many shows that start off and they set pieces up. They go, this is the characters, these are their arcs, and these are where they're gonna go. And by the time it gets to the end of the show, you know, the series finale, they feel the need to do these hotshot, insane, over-the-top things that don't really line up. They're just like shock and awe, but you're just like, well, that didn't feel like where you were going with it. This show doesn't do that. There are character arcs, there are characters, they have their arcs, they have their places, and you see the issues they have in the beginning, and by the end of the show, they resolve those. By the end of the show, it goes to their logical conclusions, and you're not upset. The show doesn't do something for the shock of the shock's sake. Everything is for a reason. There is no real wasted motion in the show. Sometimes they go off rails and be a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for? And they just kind of do random. They kind of do like off things and have just off cases, which is why it is a bit procedural in that sense. But the show is, the best I can describe this show is, it's part Western, part procedural, part crime drama. That's basically what it is. And the procedural part is really about 25% of the show. But they sprinkle those in there, though. They sprinkle in Walt solving cases and, you know, Walt solving cases in with this overarching drama of corruption and Wyoming and him having his vendettas with certain people. But just to get into a little bit of the show, give you an explanation. Walt Longmire is this old school cowboy slash sheriff. He's the old school sheriff of this really big county. I think it's called Asaroka or something like that. Of this really big county, and he's an old school sheriff. In the beginning of the show, I thought the show, and that's a great accomplishment of the show too, I thought the show was about Walt showing that you could still do it the old school way without having to, you can still do it the old school way in this new world. Showing that he could still do his job the old school way in an environment where law enforcement is done more with technology. We use technology to answer a lot more questions. We use scientists to answer a lot more questions. And he's showing that, I can do, simple things. I can tell I've hunted before. I've tracked before. I can tell, just simple things. I don't need, I can tell this man was shot, in a different spot because there's no blood on the ground. And there's no blood on the ground. The blood's just on him, which means that this was moved somewhere. I can tell this gun was fired by just kind of smelling the gun, and he's smelling it. And nothing was. Any hunter worth his salt cleans their guns, and if you fired it, you would definitely smell something down the barrel. He smelled it. This gun was never fired. That's how I know. And he's like, how do you know? That's how I know. And it's things like that of him showing that, knowledge, experience. You can't teach experience. You have to live it. You have to be through it. And that's what I thought the show was about, was being like, you can't teach experience. Walt's experience will overcome any of the tech. Walt's experience really helps him overcome so many things. And while everyone around him is telling him to get a cell phone, maybe we should update this office, maybe we should get more deputies, and he's just like, I think I'm good with what I got. And at first I thought that's what the show was about, but it turns out the show was about Walt being stuck. See, Walt lost his wife. That's what you find out in the first episode, is Walt lost his wife, and he's sort of been stuck. It's almost like he's in purgatory. He hasn't really changed. He's not a bad man or nothing. He hasn't been able to get past that, and he hasn't changed. His answering machine, it's been a year since his wife died. His answering machine still has his wife on it. He has his wife's ashes that he told people that he would spread, but he still just keeps them in a tea thing just to keep her close by. He doesn't take care of himself. He doesn't look out for himself. He's reckless. He jumps the gun. He's like he can't move forward. And that's what the show and the main character Walt Longmire is about. Is about Walt finding a way to finally move forward in life. And that happens. There's also other side characters like Victoria, played by Katie Sackhoff, Katie Sackhoff, I forgot how fine she was. There's another deputy named Bergeson. There's so many other characters in the show. There's his best friend Henry. Plus the show has an interesting tie to it as well, as it takes place with this weird thing going on with his county being basically butting heads with a Native American land. Called the res, and him butting heads with the police over there, and the whole thing about people doing things to jump in jurisdictions, and they do that thing that's usually done in other cop shows, but it's usually done with either Latinos or Black or African Americans, in terms of the whole racial environment and how race plays a factor, and how law enforcement is a touchy thing depending on what race you are, and they play that card. But they do it with the Native Americans, and it gives the show a completely different vibe than most other cop shows, or even Western, shows of this nature. Is the whole Native American aspect of it, and how some Native American people feel certain kinds of way about white people still, and about how some people are, Walt's not a bad guy, but how things have not gone so well for them, and how they're trying to overcome it, and that's always an interesting aspect of the show. I love this show. I dug it up and down. It's hard to believe that the actor who plays Walt is Australian, which blew my fucking skull, because you can't tell me that accent didn't sound authentic. I was just like, what? Come on, he's gotta be. He's a cowboy, man. Look at the way he's talking. Come on, he can't be Australian. He's Australian. Fucking nuts. But the actor who played Walt did a phenomenal job. He just plays Walt so gritty and so honest and so earnest, but tough, and not afraid to drop a motherfucker, but at the same time not afraid to care for people. He plays them so beautifully. You're angry at him. You love him. You want him to be better, and by the end of the show, the conclusion makes sense, and it's very fucking rewarding. The show is rewarding. The show does not pull the rug under you for clicks. This show gets a 10 out of 10 in my book. Loved it. Longmire, one of the best shows on Netflix. It's definitely in my top 5. Thank you guys for joining the Comic and Movie Show. Please remember to like, subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.